afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelley Kopp, and I am speaking to you from beautiful and very hot London, Ontario, Canada. I'm part of the Move Who Dig organizing committee, and we recently began to discuss what the Cultural Centre of Netherlandish Art is doing. And Laura Jaeger-Kerselt, who's on our committee, mentioned that their project uses GIS. And a bunch of us said, what on earth is GIS? And so I said, oh, I don't exactly know what it is, but I do know people who can talk about it. At the campus of the University of Western Ontario, I have people, I said. And my people is actually a person, and that person ended up going on paternity leave whilst we were in communication, but she offered up her replacement, which I'm very grateful to say within hours of starting her new job, Maia Somers said, sure, I can help you guys out, no problem. So she and I have only met officially via email, but I think it's a credit to her good nature that she agreed to do this. So thank you very much, Maia. Maia is passionate about studying the Earth's geography and processes and has more than 5 years of expertise utilizing GIS applications across various realms of natural science. She earned a Master's of Science degree in Geography and Planning from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And some of her past work has included creating maps of the high Arctic in the Canadian North for her master's thesis, and furthering initiatives to map development along the Oak Ridges Moraine, which encircles Toronto. And if you know anything about it, it's a highly contested Greenbelt. The government of Ontario and the developers are constantly trying to encroach upon it and put it at risk. And so there's a constant battle to save green space. And her work has assisted in that, and I'm very grateful, along with millions of others. Currently, the new job that I referenced is Maia has taken on GIS technicians, being the GIS technician at the Western Libraries here on campus, where she works to help researchers communicate their data via maps. She relishes this effective communication of scientific data to a variety of audiences, including what probably is her most unusual one, this one. Beyond working on campus, she finds joy in nurturing her garden on her patio, savoring a cup of tea, and running with her dog, Sadie. So thank you, Maia. Thank you for doing this, and we really look forward to your presentation. And there will be questions following, so please, people, jump in. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Maia.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'll just share my screen, and then we can get started. So let's see here. Just make sure that I am sharing the right screen with you. Oops, sorry, those are my notes. There we go. Okay. Is everyone able to see my presentation fine? Just a thumbs up, just to make sure. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so today I'm going to be introducing you to GIS and story maps. So hopefully in this session, I'll be able to provide you with some helpful tips so you can use to get started creating your own story maps, or maybe just, inspire you to look into it. So with that, let's continue. So in the session today, the goal of today's session is to show you ways in which you can showcase publications, projects, and artwork using GIS applications with a focus specifically on story maps. So I hope this presentation is able to answer some of the questions that you might have about GIS and story maps. So what we'll be talking about today is, what is GIS? What are ArcGIS story maps, and how you can create your own? And then also how you can collaborate and share your story maps once you've created them. And then I'm going to go through a quick demo of just to show you how, like what it looks like when you get started creating your own story map. And then also I'll briefly discuss how you can gain access to the story map application. So what is GIS? GIS is Geographic Information Systems, and GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, but it's also known as Geographic Information Science. So if you have a degree in GIS, it's considered, you're considered a Geographic Information Scientist. And GIS is really the data and methods and software that you might use to build an app, such as a story map. And GIS apps a story map is an example, are front-facing components that allow users to engage with your project. So although there's other software out there, we're specifically focusing on Esri's suite of software, particularly in ArcGIS Online, because that's where you're going to find the tools to create your own story maps. So all of the theory behind GIS really touches on the systems, but the systems are only one piece of the puzzle. And, it's really more than just maps. So the G is the geospatial component in GIS, and geospatial data is any data with a geographic component to it, really. So if you've ever planned a road trip or looked for a nearby restaurant in Google, or if you've ever synced your location with one of your social media posts, then you've worked with geospatial data. And there are actually thousands of applications of GIS. And really, if you're creative enough, I believe that you can use GIS really in any field of work. So I was so excited to hear that your group was interested in this. And this presentation, I'm actually going to share with the group to be passed along. So any links that I include, you'll be able to access through my shared PDF. So I've included a link here which you can explore thousands different applications of GIS that are all included on this webpage. And the caveat here is that you don't need to know all the ins and outs about GIS in order to use the story map builder. So maps are really great for visualizing space and place and adding an interactive spatial component to a narrative, but you don't have to use maps in your story maps. Story maps are a really sneaky way to use a GIS tool and to not need to know all the technical background that goes into it. So I've included this table to guide you through where story maps and GIS sort of intersect. So story maps live within ArcGIS Online, which is a cloud subscription service that hosts all different kinds of applications, builders, and tools within it. And story maps is just one of those pieces. So ArcGIS Online is part of a larger landscape of services that fall under the umbrella of a company called Esri. And this cloud-based service would be similar to Microsoft Office 365 files that you'd store on the OneDrive. So when you see the term Esri, that's the company that runs ArcGIS, ArcGIS Online, and Story Maps. So if you're ever, you want to keep this in mind, because if you're ever going to look for information on story maps or maybe some tutorials that you want to try out, then you're going to want to look for Esri's tutorials. So ArcGIS story maps are a tool that combines interactive maps with multimedia content and also text to tell stories. So you can tell a story about anything, really. They're built using interactive web builder tools that are cloud hosted by Esri, as I said before. And these cloud hosted stories are contained within Esri's ArcGIS Online environment. So it's a fully functioning information product. Like once you create a story map, it's fully functioning. It has a URL, so you can actually share it with anyone, even someone that doesn't have an ArcGIS Online account. And story maps can be as long or short as you want to make them. And in addition, you can make them for a lot of different purposes. So you can use text, images, links, and audio, and of course, maps and much more you can add to them to tell your story. So because I'm approaching this from the perspective of a researcher as I work at a university, I sort of think about this, where to incorporate story maps in terms of the research life cycle. So there are multiple points along your project or your course that you could incorporate a GIS application. And story maps really do shine in the outreach and assessment stage where you can engage with the public. So engage the public with your research. You can embed Google Analytics codes into the back end of a site to track your usage, or you could use the built-in tracking tools. But you could really use story maps along any stage of your research cycle. So for example, you could use story maps to help collect data from the general public. You could use it as a way to consolidate and explain your analysis. to showcase a piece of writing that you've done, or maybe a publication that you have released as well. So there's so many ways that you can use this, but this is just, my perspective as a researcher, but even if you aren't a researcher, you can still use story maps. So you could tell a story about a recent vacation that you went on and, share the link with your family to show them all the cool pictures you took and everything you experienced. Or you could summarize the goals of your organization and share it. Or maybe you want to showcase the work of a specific artist, or even host your own virtual museum, which we'll look at some examples of that later. The possibilities are really endless. But you don't need to use maps to make a successful story map. And I really want to emphasize that story maps are more than just maps. So here at Western, the book and book preservation basics course uses story maps. So students get to pick a book and create a digital exhibit using story maps for one of their projects. And I'm going to show you just a quick example of that. If I can pull up that page for you. Yeah, so this is the Faculty of Information and Media Studies open data page. This is for the course History of the Book. And what they have here is just like a collection of story maps that students had made. So they're showcasing them on this website. And so I just want to show you one of those maps to take a look and just to see like what a story map looks like and how it doesn't just have to be maps. So this one is on a book, Plant Life in Canada. And the majority of this story map is really is text. So you can see they've got pictures of what the book looks like, and pictures of the content within the book. They've also used a slider tool, which is one of the tools in the Story Maps app, which you can use to, they're showing the Ontario water lily drawn in the book versus this photograph in comparison. So you can do some really awesome things with story maps, and you can embed links. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys like a first look at what this can look like. And I think they've included a map at the end in this, but you can see that most of it is text and images. So go back to the presentation. And as I was looking around to find examples that would be relevant for your group, I found a story map that a group created to discuss the advantages of combining GIS and art. And I thought it was really cool that someone had made a story map on that. So I thought this would be a good example to showcase that there are other artists and museums using ArcGIS to share their collections and projects and artwork with the public. So one of the things in here that Esri's slogan is the science of where, but in this story map, someone proposed that we should also be talking about the art of where, and that art enriches geography and geography enriches art. So some of the ways they listed here was that geographic knowledge gives artists new ways to talk about their art in context with their community, history, and personal experience. And that artists may be able to reach new audiences and even explore new mediums if they're using GIS. And adding a location really can add context and meaning to art in new ways so that it can make it more accessible to more people. So there's also a collection called The Art of Where, and it's hosted through Esri's story maps. And basically it's showcasing story maps about art. So I've included a link here that you can click on the image here when I send the PDF and explore this collection if you want to get inspired. So it's something to note that if your organization creates many story maps as well, that you can actually host them as a collection. So this is a bunch of different story maps shown together in a collection through the Story Maps webpage. So this would be really great if you have a whole bunch of different collections that you want to showcase through Story Maps, but you don't want to create one giant long story map. You can host them in a collection. And this is another collection that I found. So this is, there are many museums using story maps to create virtual exhibits. And if you visit this page, you can see that Esri's curated a whole collection of these exhibits for you to explore and potentially spark some inspiration for your own work. So I've also included the links to this on here too, if you want to take a look at that later. And some of these examples I found were actually showcasing a virtual museum and then also a collection story map. So I'll just share that with you as well. Just quickly put that up here. So this is the Objects of Wonder. So the Museum of Natural History made this. So they've created a story map to showcase the collections that they have, and they use maps in this as well to showcase the origins of these collections. So you can see, yeah, it's very, very powerful to have maps associated with their collections, and you're just able to visualize their collection in ways that you wouldn't normally expect to do. So some other collections that they've got, I thought this one was interesting. So they traced this item across the globe to see where it traveled. So they were able to trace its origins. It traveled all over the world. So I thought that was a really good example of a museum showcasing their collections using a story map. And then another one, which is really awesome and is more complex, is a virtual museum. So this is a virtual exhibit about Alexander von Humboldt, and it's put on by the Smithsonian Museum. And if you scroll through, you can actually, it's like you're walking through their museum as you scroll through the story map. So I think that this was something they thought about, especially during COVID when people weren't able to be places in person. And this was a really powerful tool to allow people to still view this museum exhibit, but from their own home, at their own computer. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that as an example of some things that other museums are doing to showcase artwork. Yeah. And so now I want to take you through some steps to create your first story map. Oops. So before you go and build a story map that's linked to a specific project or task, it really helps to sit down and to plan things out. So I'd like to just walk you through some of these steps because story maps are unique in the sense that, you know, they're publicly shared. You can share them publicly using a link online. So you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And this was actually adopted from Hannah Weber's Planning and Outlining Your Story, and I've included the link to this here if you want to check it out. But basically, the first step is these three things. So you want to make sure you identify who your target audience is. You define your key takeaways. So while you're creating your story map, what's the purpose? You want to create an inventory of your content. So this is really a list of things that you might include in your story maps. For example, the images that you might want to include, if you want to include any GIFs or audios or audio or video. And of course, if you want to include any maps, you can create an inventory of what you want to include. And also formatting this stuff ahead of time is also really, really helpful. So after that, once you have all of that content together, you would want to draft your outline. And then once you have that done, you can basically just drag and drop everything into your story map. And this is just another example of the first step that you might go through. So you can see here, let me see if I can use the laser pointer. So they've got the target audience. This was a story map planned by Liz Sutherland, who was the previous GIS technician who's on leave. She made one about Ridgetown, Ontario. So she identified first who her target audience was, the key takeaways that she wanted people to get when they went through the story map, and then made a content inventory and then also an outline for it. So this is an example of what that might look at, and what that might look like. And then once you have your outline done, you can basically start writing. So you can sort of think about how you might weave all the pieces in your outline together. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to write it all down. So outlines can take a variety of formats. So you can use a simple bulleted list to like a full-blown storyboard, a slide deck, or even a collection of index cards, which you might sort around on your desk. So the format isn't important, but it's really helpful to choose to be able to, write all this down and experiment with it. So this is the fun part where you get to start adding images and maps, when you actually get to add the content to your story map. And I'm going to show you how to do this in the demo in a bit later in the presentation. So you can add whatever you feel will best represent the story you're trying to convey. And it's helpful if you have your map content, or sorry, your content, so those are the images, maps if you wish, organized somewhere in a folder before you begin creating. So then you can just drag and drop them into your story map really easily. And if you want to add a map, this is maybe the part that's sort of newer to most people here. It's actually fairly easy to do so. So there are collections of pre-made maps created by Esri and other users, which you can access to add to your story map in just a few clicks. So also, if you wanted to create your own express map, maybe you wanted to highlight a specific area, you can do that. So you can either choose to build short and simple story maps, or you can also build like really in-depth full open data sites with multiple levels of data. And a story map in itself is typically linear. So as you saw earlier, I was scrolling through, but if you add an interactive map, or like you saw in the museum displays, like a virtual museum, this really encourages data exploration. So you're not just linearly scrolling through the story map, but you're able to sort of explore the data on your own. And the top picture here is an example of a story map that a student at Western created, showing a collection of story maps that they created. But if you added a map, this is some data from the Northern Tornadoes Project database. You would be able to zoom in and out and click and explore the data in a different way than just scrolling through. So that's something to consider as well. And if you want to add your own map, an express map is a quick way to do that. Express maps are interactive as well. Basically, you just search the location that you want here at the top, and then you can add information or photos about the location, and it will just get inserted right into your story map. Another way to add a map is through the scene viewer or other pre-made maps. And you can insert these web maps just as easily into your story map to really help deepen the narrative through visualizations, along with the text and other images and video that you might include. So the last thing you're going to do is refine your design. So there are a whole bunch of themes that Esri has available, and they've provided that you can choose from, or you can create your own theme. So at the end of the day, this is a web-based tool, and you're building it with some sort of audience in mind. So you want to be thinking about who's going to be viewing it, and which may impact whether it makes sense to make a really long story map or a short one. It's important to think about before you start building your story map. So I've also included some best practices. I thought these were helpful, just things to think about in terms of storytelling that have been helpful and written specifically for creating story maps. So these would include starting off with a bang. So you want to start off with something that's impactful, that will capture your readers' attention. It's always great if you can invest people into your story. If you add a hero to your story, finding a character that you can incorporate. Sometimes it's not possible to do that, but it's always helpful. Rhythm and is sort of happens through repetition, which can enable readers to sort of settle into the story. So for example, if you were showcasing maybe artworks around the world, you'd want to make sure that you're showing each one in a consistent manner throughout the story. That would really help readers know what to expect as they're going through and keep them engaged. A little world is just basically unifying all the elements of your narrative. So like pick a theme that sort of picks the story or fits the story that you're trying to tell to sort of immerse the viewer into the story fully. You can actually go on ArcGIS online story maps app, you can view what your story looks like on different screen sizes. And I can show you that in the demo as well. So whether or not you're viewing it on a phone, you can see what that would look like, and maybe you need to shift things around so it looks better on phones. You could consider both big and small viewpoints. So you might want to start broad and then get specific, or vice versa. Of course, adding a map also can add a lot to your story, but you don't need any specialized skills to add a map, and you don't have to have a map. It's good to, sometimes short and sweet is good, but it's always good to try and find a length that would suit your viewers. Like maybe if you know the viewers of the story map are going to appreciate a novel length story, then maybe that's what you want to do. And as I showed before, you can also create collections of stories if you don't want to create one long story map, so you can host them in a collection. And finally, it's really great if you can put an action at the end to give your readers something to do before leaving. So this could be even just like a link for them to take away and explore after reading your story map. So those are just some helpful tips that I thought I would include in this before we move on. So finally, once you have your story map set, you're happy with it, you can publish it. So you can publish it to a specific organization. You can publish it privately if you don't want to share it with anyone yet, or you can publish it publicly so that anyone who has access to ArcGIS Online can view your story map using a link. And also another cool thing that you can do is you can create a group that you would like to share your story map to, and this can allow you to only share your story map with specific people, or also this can allow you to enable others to edit your story map as well. So that's sort of ways that you might collaborate with others in creating a story map too. And all these tips and tricks are pulled from the resources page on the Story Maps website. And I've included links to that here. And these are really useful, you know, if you ever forget how to create a story map, or you want to find a new way to tell a story, or try out some of the tutorials to learn something new. So as someone who just learned to build their first story map recently, once you have access to ArcGIS Online, it's actually very easy to get started. So I'll now take you through a quick demo of the site to show you what it looks like when you start to create your story map, and I'll show you how you can build your first story map. So the demo I'm going to be showing today is a tutorial that's created by Esri to show you how you can get started building your first story. So this is what my story map main page looks like. So right now, as I said, I've only just created my first story map. So I've only got one in here. But yeah, this is what the landing page looks like. And just to show you, if you wanted to navigate to it on your own, you could type in story maps and go to the link ArcGIS Story Maps, and then you would log in that way. Otherwise, the other thing you can do is you can just simply go to ArcGIS Online, and when you navigate there, you can sign in. So sometimes you'll be able to sign in if you have an organization that you're affiliated with. I'm affiliated with a Western, so I would put my Western credentials in there and then sign in through my organization, or you could create a personal login to access that. But yeah, I just wanted to show you there are a couple ways to access it. So first thing I will show you, I'm going to move this over here, is when you're creating a new story, you would start that from scratch. So that's what you're going to be looking at. But if we follow through the steps that I was discussing in best practices, then the first thing we want to do is sort of create that outline that I mentioned before. So this tutorial specifically, if you were to go through on your own, they provide an outline for you that you can use to drag and drop things in there. So you have a template to work from already. But yeah, I just thought also we might want to put key audiences and key takeaways. So we have those in there just to focus what we think our focus, we want the focus of this story map to be, like who we want to be reading it and what we want them to take away from it. So once we have that, we can basically, we'll be able to drag and drop this content into the story map builder in ArcGIS Online. And what I'm going to do is I'll just put both of these on the screen here. There we go. Okay, oops, screen size too small. There. Okay, so the one other thing I wanted to show you as well is, as I mentioned, it can be really helpful to have all your images in a folder. So this folder actually came with the tutorial that provided by Esri, and you can see that they've sorted their images into beginning, middle, and end. So you kind of know, where those images are going to go, especially if you have a lot of them. So we've got the images here to drag and drop, and we're ready to create our story map. So first things first, let's put in the title. So let me just zoom out here a little bit. So yeah, we'll copy the title, and then we can basically just click on the story title here and paste it in. So you can see that we've got our title on there, and then we're going to include a short introduction. So I'm going to include this as the introduction, and we can paste that in there as well. And you can see that there's a text cap on here. So we might want to just take some of that and make it a bit shorter. So now we might want to add a cover image. So that would be sort of like the bang component to say we want to capture people's attention. And it's very easy to do that. You can see there's a button right up here where you can add a cover image and you can drag and drop your files. So let's pick an image from the files. Let's pick one that would be impactful. So I think one of the images that I liked was sort of towards the middle. I think there were pictures, or maybe it was in the end, pictures of volcanoes. Yeah, let's do the erupting volcano photo. So we can simply drag and drop. Otherwise, if you know the location of the file on your computer, you can browse for them. So you can do that as well, but I always prefer to drag and drop. I find it simpler. So you can see that that loaded, and so we can add that image. And what happens is that image is added to the top of our story map. So you can see it's already starting to come together. And something else that you might want to consider as well, just in terms of design, is there's this design tab just above here on the top bar. And if you click that, then you can change sort of the way this cover image looks. So right now, we can change it to a side-by-side view, which looks kind of like that. Or I think I really like this one. This one looks nice. It suits it well. Yeah, you can do either of these. And then the other thing that you can do here too is, if you don't like the position of the photo, you can click on it, and then sorry, I'll just do that again. I did it really quickly. If you click on the options, the little gear there, you can adjust this little circle to say where you want the center of your image to be. And there's actually, it shows you what it would look like on a phone if you were to scroll through, and what that image looks like on a desktop. So that's pretty helpful. So if we click that, then we can see we've got a nice view of the volcano. So then we can basically just drag and drop text in. Now there's a couple really interesting things that I want to show you. So I'm gonna sort of skip over pieces of this just so I can make sure that I have time to show it to you all. But basically, the first thing is we just sort of want to introduce them to the story. So to do that, we can just add some of that intro text and copy and paste it. And you can see as you sort of move your cursor, there are these pluses. So you can click on the plus to basically add any content throughout the rest of your story map. So the next thing that is in this plan is to add an express map of the location, the study location. So let's go and do that. If we click the plus, then you can see there are lots of options, but we specifically want to add a map. So we want to add an express map. So this is just a new map that we're going to go and create to add specifically to our story map. And to do this, we know that we want it to be this location. So we can just copy our location and then search by location up here on the top left. Yeah, and so it navigates the map, and then we can choose if we want to add it. So I want to add that marker to my map. And also you can change the map view. So you can scroll in and out using this, or you can use a little scroller on your mouse cursor. But I think, yeah, we want to make sure we sort of put Guatemala there in the middle. So also, the other thing you can do is you can add an image or a video to your map. So let's add one of the images to our map. So let's go back to, let's go back to the beginning images, and we can add an image from a building at that location. So we'll add that in there. So we've got our image, and we want to make sure you can add a description if you want, but I'm just going to click save in the interest of time. So that's been added. And now if you click save down here at the bottom, you'll save the entire map to your story map. So that was pretty simple, I think. So basically now you've got a map on here, and you can click on it and your image is there. So that's sort of our area map. So it's pretty cool how quickly we were able to add that. Another thing that I think would be helpful to show you is just sort of changing headings. So if we want to add another tab to our story map, we can add another heading. And so we'll add it as a text. So right now it's just sort of like simple text, but if you click on it on the text, I think it's a double click, you can change it to a heading. So now you see we've changed it to a heading. And if we want that heading to show up here, we can go back into design. And then in optional story sections, we can turn on navigation. So we turn that on. That should add another heading. Oh, it didn't do it. Let's see. I add it again. There we go. Yeah, so sorry, I was looking in the wrong spot. The heading has been added to our story map here. And then if we were to add another one, let's say we also want to add the heading for why do people love volcanoes? And so we can sort of start to build our outline and then add other things in between. So let's add another heading, and we'll add a space between them. We can add the heading, and you can see that that heading has popped up. So now as you go through your story map, you can click into the different headings, and it allows you to go through the story map a little bit quicker, or go to a specific section if that's what you want. So I'm going to show you how to add a sidecar as well, which is a really useful tool. So you can simply add an image. So if you wanted to add, say, the arrival image here, let me see. So you just scroll down to image, you can add one. So we can drag and drop an image in there. Let's do the arrival image, and we'll add that. And so it's super easy adding that image. But say you wanted to add a whole bunch of images with an explanation next to them, you can add something called a sidecar. So if you scroll down to the immersive settings, a sidecar is there, and basically it allows you to add a bunch of images. It's like different slides that your reader can scroll through. So we'll just pick one of those. And basically what we can do here is this is perfect. So they've got a whole bunch of images in a row. So we can add the caption. Let's add a caption for each one. So you can add another window. Let's add one for the hot spring image. And then there's also an image about the spiritual significance of volcanoes in the area. So basically, we've got that. I'm going to remove that caption. So then with each of these descriptions, so for the first one, it was about agriculture, so coffee growing in the area. We can add that image in. So I'll add the coffee image. We can move to the second one, which is the hot springs. So we can add the hot spring image. And then also we'll add the flowers image here. So each of these images go with the associated text. And then you can see, as you scroll through, you can see that each image has text associated. So I give you a pretty quick rundown of sort of like how you would build that on your own. If you want to preview it to see what it looks like, yes. Okay, so what this means is there's also an undo button, and this is a new thing that Esri has released. So it's currently being trialed. So that's what that was saying. But we can preview that. We're okay to reset our undo history. So this is what it would look like on your screen. And maybe I'll just make it bigger for you. So this is what it looks like on my window. If you want to see what it looks like on a desktop, you can view that as well. So you can scroll through and see how the user might view that. You can look at it on a tablet, and you can also change if it's landscape or profile, or what it would look like on a phone. So these are really cool things. And you can also test out to see, how your map would work as well. So you can click on the map, you can zoom in and out. So yeah, those are some really awesome features to allow you to just confirm that you're happy with your story map before you publish it. And so when you want to publish, you click publish at the top there. So I'll just do that one more time. Publish. And then you're able to share it. So you set the sharing level, so you can set it to private. So if you're not ready to share it, it can be only you who views the item. You can set it to your organization who can view the item, or you can allow anyone to view the item. So the public would be a link that anyone could access. And once you change those settings, so like if you were to set it to public, you can allow it to show in web searches. You can say if you want someone to be able to duplicate it. And this is where you could add groups. So if I had a story map group, I could invite people into my story map group and share it to them specifically. So yeah, those are some really, that's sort of my demo. And I'm just going to run through a couple last things really quickly before I allow you to ask me some questions. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is actually how to access these tools to create a story map. So there are 3 user types that can provide access to the storytelling capabilities of ArcGIS. The most common ones are the creator user type, and then also the GIS professional user type. And these are ones that you could purchase on your own and get a license for. And these would specifically give you access to using ArcGIS story maps. Now, if you're associated with an organization that has licenses to provide you for ArcGIS Online, you maybe want to take a look at that. Like my organization at Western gives licenses to students to allow them to create these for their courses or their research. But if you don't have access to that and you simply want to try it out, you can gain access to a public account. It does have limited capabilities, but it is free. So you can go in, create your ArcGIS Online account, and then immediately try and get started just to, test it out, see if it would work for you. I've included a link to what those limitations are. Some of them are just not being able to collaborate with other users on story maps. You don't have as much usability with images. I don't think you can embed links, and you don't have any support, technical support from Esri. But I think there are also others. So if you're interested in that, you can check out that link there that I provided. And then I've also provided 2 more links down here at the bottom for on licensing and how you can access the Esri Canada store. And then I've included a lot of links throughout my presentation to help you get started with story maps. They're all kind of scattered, so I thought I would also put them in this end section in resources, just if you want to see what they all are, you can take a look here. So yeah, I will send a PDF out and make that available to you sometime today. So thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you today, and thanks for listening. So just, I guess now, if there are any questions, this would be the time to ask them.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was wonderful. I'm almost overwhelmed by the amount of information. You two did the big and the small, so that's fantastic. And a couple of my questions had been around accessibility, and you answered those. So I just wanted to say thank you. And maybe how does it differ in broad strokes from just creating a website? Like is it that there's so many more tools in there, or is it specifically it's sort of physical, spatial capabilities that make it so exciting for you? And connected to that, are there any other companies other than Esri that offer this kind of software?
Those are great questions. I think that for your first question, like how is it different from a website? I would say one of the biggest things is that Esri hosts the data that you create on a server that they provide for you. So usually, if you were to try and create your own web map on a website, you would have to find somewhere else to host the data in order to be able to share it. And data can take up quite a bit of space. So that's one of the big things I think Esri has to offer. The other thing that I think is there's something very special about story maps, because I have worked for other organizations where I've tried to sort of reproduce story maps from the back end using code, but there's really nothing else out there that I've found that is equivalent to what story maps has to offer in terms of just like making it super accessible for anyone to get started creating a story map right away. There are a lot of ways that you could try and build this on your own in the back end, and if you want to like get involved in the coding, you could totally do that, or if you were able to hire someone to do that for you, then you could, but there are just a lot more complications. So I would say that's one of the biggest things that Esri has to offer, plus the technical support. They're very helpful as well.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I'll ask you to stop sharing your screen, and then we can see if there are other questions from other people.
Shelley, there's some questions in the chat.
Okay, we shall take a look here. Someone asked, can these be incorporated into in-gallery features or interactives, or can they be embedded into existing websites?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
That is a good question. So I think, I'm not sure what they mean by in-gallery features, but I know that you can embed your story maps into your website. So there are a lot of organizations that do that.
Okay, I think that's probably what they meant.
Okay.
So if you, many people here work for museums, and then if you make a story map, it can be uploaded to, or a link to it on the museum's website. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if they wanted to see other examples of that, there are a lot that I provided in this, so they might be able to find the answers to see how other organizations have embedded them with museum work from those links as well.
Okay. Oh, here's one about accessibility features, alternate text for images, visual descriptions of maps, or video transcriptions. Do story maps have an accessibility component?
They do. So I didn't show that in my demo just because of time, but you are able to add descriptions, and there is an accessibility component that they have built in. So if that's really important to you, that's something that you can do in the application.
Okay. Oh, and Michelle has refined she meant in gallery as on a tablet or on monitors within an exhibition.
Yeah.
So that's a good question.
Actually, I've had that question recently since I've started this position, actually, and so I know there's a group that's trying to. They've got TV or like an interactive display, and they want to put their story map on that display so that people walking through their gallery can actually scroll through it on their own, or like interactively interact with the map and explore maps and things like that on a screen within their exhibit and physically there. So yeah, that's a really good question.
Okay, so it is possible. Any other questions from the squares? Oh,
I have a question
Stephanie.
for you, Maya.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly, I've used story maps once when I was in grad school to make a project, but they're kind of like a single page website, right? Like you can't make multiple pages. It's all just one long scrolling. Is that right?
So there is, I guess the collections would be one way to do that. So if you have a certain user type, which is I think the professional or the creator user type that I mentioned, I think you're able to create collections, and you can host, so you can visualize or see multiple story maps available on one page. So say you had like many chapters to your story, you could create separate story maps for them and then host them on like a main story maps collection page. So if someone wanted access to that whole collection, they could click on that link and then have access to any of the story maps that are related to that. And then I think another thing that's helpful, if you do have a longer story map, one thing that I showed in the demo was just breaking it up into like sections. So if you add a heading and then you allow those navigation sections on the top tab, then people can click into those sections. So if you wanted to sort it by chapter, you could have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, right? And if that was something that was suitable for the story map and the audience that you wanted to present it to, then you could totally do that. You have a long story map.
So did that, Stephanie, I think, was it the tabs that you weren't sure there were either? Like,
Yeah, I just remember when I was doing it, like you see all of the subsections across the top,
Yeah.
but they're not like individual pages. It just jumps you down farther on the page.
Right.
And
Yes.
like if you have like a really long like
Mhm.
essay, or if like a couple of different chapters, like it gets really, really long. But that's a good idea to make each one individual and then put them all into a collection to have.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people have done. And I mean, I didn't work directly with them, but I know within our organization, there were some examples that I also included in the presentation that you can see sort of what a collection is. And basically, they had too much of a story to tell within one story map. So you can send them one link to see all the stories that they created, so that you don't just have one long story map. So I think the solution to that simply would be to make multiple story maps and then link them through a collection.
thank you. Anyone else? If not, I can thank Maya from the bottom of my heart for this. This was wonderful. And thanks to each of you for coming on this warm day. I'm not sure anyone is talking to us from a cool place at this point. But yes, thank you, Maya. And we look forward to the follow-up PDF. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to forward them on to Maya from any of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everyone.
much for having me.
Thanks, Maya. Super interesting.
Thanks.